Look closely at this face. A swastika on the temple. A mouth stitched shut, resembling a skeleton. A gaze that is cold, empty, and devoid of humanity. Most people, seeing him in a dark alley, would run for their lives. But thousands of women around the world are doing something very different. They are writing him love letters. They are creating thirst trap edits on TikTok. They are signing petitions to save him from the death penalty. They call him Deadly Handsome. His name is Wade Wilson. And although he shares a name with Marvel's Deadpool, he is no anti-hero. He is a monster who brutally ended the lives of 2 women for nothing more than amusement. But why, after hearing the graphic details of how he turned living human beings into, as he put it, spaghetti, does the internet explode not with rage but with arousal? Today we are not just chronicling a bloody night in Florida. We are diving into the mind of a man who laughs in the judge's face while his death sentence is read. And perhaps more disturbingly, we will attempt to decode the psychology of those who fall in love with evil. Hybristophilia, the dark triad, and pure, distilled psychopathy. Welcome to the story of Wade Wilson. A story where beauty meets the beast and the beast wins. To understand the monster Wade Wilson became, we must first look at who he pretended to be. Before the face tattoos, before the courtroom theatrics, Wilson didn't look like a demon. He looked like a typical, even attractive Florida guy. Tall, athletic, with a wide smile. That normality was his weapon. It was the trap that caught his first victim, Kristine Melton. Let's go back to October 6, 2019. Cape Coral, Florida. A humid, heavy evening. Kristine Melton, a 35-year-old woman, and her friend decide to go to a bar to unwind, listen to some live music, and escape the grind of the work week. That is where they met Wade. It is crucial to understand the context here. Wilson was a chameleon. Witnesses and Kristine's friend would later describe him as charming, polite, and fun. This is a textbook example of psychopathic, social mimicry. Like a predator in the wild, he read the room. He knew exactly what to say to lower their defenses. He wasn't creepy, he was the life of the party. The night went so well that when the bar was closing, Kristine, charmed by this new acquaintance, invited him and her friend back to her home to continue hanging out. This is a decision we often judge in hindsight, but in the moment, it felt safe. Wilson had crafted a perfect illusion of safety. At Kristine's home, the atmosphere remained relaxed. Eventually, Kristine's friend left, believing Kristine was in good hands. The last thing she saw was a smiling Wade Wilson. No one could have imagined that the second the door clicked shut, the mask would begin to slip. We don't know exactly what triggered the violence. And that is the most terrifying aspect of Wilson's psychopathy. In most homicides there is a motive: jealousy, money, revenge, a sudden fit of rage. With Wilson, the motive was non-existent. Later, in his cold, monotone confessions, he would imply a chilling simplicity: "I just wanted to do it." When they were alone, Kristine fell asleep. She felt safe enough to close her eyes next to him. That was when he struck. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was a methodical extermination. He strangled her while she slept. No screaming match, no struggle for survival. Just a silent snuffing out of a life. But what makes his profile truly disturbing is what happened next. Most killers panic. Adrenaline spikes. Fear of capture sets in. They run. Wade Wilson? He felt nothing. Absolute zero. He simply took her car. He didn't flee the state. He went for a joyride. He had no plan, no destination. He was like a predator that had just fed but still felt the urge to hunt. This highlights impulsive psychopathy, living entirely in the moment with zero concept of consequences or the future. And his night was far from over. While driving the stolen car of the woman whose body was cooling in her own home, Wilson spotted a lone figure walking on the side of the road. It was Diane Ruiz, a 43-year-old mother walking to her job at a bar. She didn't know Kristine Melton. The only thing connecting these 2 women was that they crossed paths with Wade Wilson on the same night. Wilson pulled over. He put the mask back on. He rolled down the window and asked for directions. Diane, being a kind and helpful person, approached the car. Wilson used his charm to lure her inside, perhaps offering a ride, perhaps claiming he was hopelessly lost. We will never know the exact words, but the result is history. Diane got into the car with a killer. What followed goes beyond the understanding of even seasoned criminologists. If Kristine's murder was quiet, Diane's was a display of pure sadism. When Diane realized something was wrong and tried to escape, Wilson attacked. He strangled her, beat her, and eventually pushed her out of the car. But she was still alive. She was breathing. And here Wilson did something that made the jury gasp in horror. He didn't drive away. He turned the car around. He looked at his victim struggling to stand and he slammed on the gas. He ran her over. What? Then he stopped, reversed, and ran her over again. He did this repeatedly until, in his own words, she looked like spaghetti. This wasn't just violence, it was the total dehumanization of a human being. To Wade Wilson, Diane Ruiz wasn't a mother or a person. She was an object, a speed bump, a toy to be broken. After the double homicide, he didn't call a lawyer. He didn't call 911. He called his biological father. And that phone call provides us with a window into his soul. He wasn't crying. He wasn't panicked. He was bragging. "I did it, Dad. I killed 2 bitches." His voice sounded like he had just won a video game. This was the first sign of the extreme narcissism that would later define his trial. He didn't just want to kill, he wanted an audience. Let's analyze the psychology of that phone call to his father, Steve Testaseka. Wade is an adopted child, and he had reconnected with his biological father later in life. In Wade's twisted mind, this call was a bonding moment. He was seeking validation. He was seeking a perverse kind of approval. He described the murders in graphic detail, expecting what? A pat on the back? Acknowledgement of his power? Steve Testaseka, however, did what any sane person would do. He was horrified, but he played along. He kept Wade on the phone. He realized he was talking to a ticking time bomb. While Wade boasted about the carnage, Steve was gathering information. He became the primary witness against his own son. He called the police and directed them to Wade's location. When the police finally cornered Wade Wilson, he was barricaded in a house, having broken in after abandoning the car. The arrest wasn't a tearful surrender. It was chaotic, but once he was in custody, his demeanor shifted again. We have to talk about the interrogation footage. This is usually the part of the story where the killer breaks down, lawyers up, or tries to lie his way out. Wade Wilson did none of that. He sat in the interrogation room wearing a hospital gown, looking relaxed. Bored even. He spoke to the detectives as if they were old buddies catching up over a beer. "I'm hungry," he said. "Can I get a burger? Some fries." He tried to leverage the location of the bodies for fast food. Let that sink in. He used the bodies of Kristine and Diane, women he had just brutalized, as bargaining chips for a cheeseburger. This is a classic trait of psychopathy, instrumental aggression. Everything and everyone is a tool to get what he wants. In that moment, the dead women were no longer people to him. They were currency to buy lunch. The detectives were stunned by his candor. He admitted to everything, but the way he admitted it was bone-chilling. There was no shaking in his voice. No tears. He described running over Diane Ruiz with the same emotional weight as someone describing how they parked a car. "I ran her over until she looked like spaghetti," he repeated. He even mimicked the sound of the car hitting her body. He laughed. This is where the Deadpool persona begins to emerge, long before the media gave him the nickname. He treated his own life and the lives of others as a joke. A dark, twisted sitcom where he was the star. He showed a complete detachment from reality. It wasn't insanity, he knew exactly what he did and he knew it was illegal. It was emotional detachment. The part of the brain that processes empathy, guilt, and horror simply wasn't firing. During these initial interrogations, Wilson also began to manipulate the narrative. He tried to paint himself as a victim of circumstances, blaming drugs, blaming his childhood, blaming the victims. "She made me mad," he would say, shifting the blame onto the woman he strangled in her sleep. This is externalization of blame, another key dark triad trait. Nothing is ever the narcissist's fault. The world forced him to do it. But the most shocking transformation was yet to come. Between his arrest in 2019 and his trial in 2024, Wade Wilson changed physically. He entered jail looking like a frat boy. He came out looking like a comic book villain. He began tattooing his face. First small markings, then the swastika, then the stitches across the mouth, a direct homage to the Joker or a skeletal grin. He darkened his eyes. He shaved his head. Why would a man facing the death penalty make himself look more like a monster? A defense attorney would beg him to look presentable for the jury. Wade did the opposite. From a psychological perspective, this is an act of defiance and ownership. He knew society viewed him as a monster, so he decided to become the ultimate monster. It was a way to regain control. In prison he had no freedom, but he had control over his skin. By destroying his own face, he was sending a message: I don't care about your rules. I don't care about your judgment. I am what I am. It was also a branding exercise. Wade Wilson was preparing for his biggest performance yet, the trial. He knew the cameras would be there. He knew the world would be watching. And he wanted to give them a show they would never forget. And unfortunately it worked. As the footage of his casual cruelty and his terrifying new look hit the internet, something strange happened. Instead of being repulsed, a corner of the internet became obsessed. The Wade Wilson fan club was born. Fast forward to June 2024. The trial begins. Usually, a death penalty trial is a somber, heavy event. The air is thick with grief. But Wade Wilson turned the Lee County Courthouse into his personal runway. By this time, his physical transformation was complete. The boy next door was gone. In his place sat a man who looked like a character from a horror movie. A swastika on his temple. Red for War tattooed on his neck. Stitches inked across his mouth to create a permanent, skeletal grin. Most defendants try to hide their tattoos with makeup or turtlenecks to appear more human to the jury. Wade wore his ink like war paint. But it wasn't just the tattoos, it was his behavior. As prosecutors detailed how he crushed Diane Ruiz under the wheels of a car, Wade didn't look down in shame. He didn't cry. He smirked. He winked at the cameras. He postured, puffing out his chest, adjusting his suit jacket and slicking back his hair. He was hyper-aware of every lens pointed at him. There is a specific moment that went viral. When the jury returned with the guilty verdict, a moment that usually destroys a defendant, Wade barely reacted. He simply swallowed, looked around with a bored expression, and maintained that terrifying dead-eyed stare. It was the ultimate display of narcissism. You can judge me, but you cannot hurt me because I don't care. And then the internet broke. Instead of revulsion, a disturbing corner of social media, specifically TikTok and Twitter, exploded with what can only be described as Wade Wilson thirst. Videos of him in court, slowed down and set to bad boy music, began racking up millions of views. Captions read, "Why is he so hot? I can fix him, free Wade, and he looks like a sexy villain." Thousands of letters began flooding the jail. Women sent him money. They sent him photos. A petition to spare him from the death penalty gained thousands of signatures, not based on legal evidence, but based on the sentiment that he was too handsome to die. We need to stop and analyze this. What is happening here? This is not just a quirk. It is a recognized psychological phenomenon called Hybristophilia, also known as Bonnie and Clyde syndrome. Why do women fall for men who rape, torture, and kill women? Psychologists identify three main drivers, and Wade Wilson triggers all of them. 1. The "I can fix him" fantasy. Many of his admirers believe that underneath the tattoos and the murder charges, there is a wounded little boy. They see his lack of emotion not as psychopathy but as trauma. They convince themselves that they alone have the special power to heal him. If he had met me, they think, he wouldn't have done this. I can love the monster out of him. It is a savior complex on steroids. They don't want a normal partner, they want a project. 2. The appeal of this safe alpha. Evolutionary psychology suggests that some women are attracted to aggression and dominance because historically, these traits meant protection. But in the modern world, a serial killer is the ultimate dangerous alpha. However, and this is key, he is behind bars. He is in a cage. He is safe. A woman can write to Wade Wilson, fantasize about his danger, and feel the thrill of dating a predator, without the actual risk of being strangled in her sleep like Kristine Melton. It is a controlled thrill like riding a roller coaster. 3. The desire for notoriety. Let's be honest. Some of these women simply want to be famous. In the age of social media, being the girlfriend of the Deadpool Killer gets you views, gets you attention. It makes you the main character in a dark drama. Wade Wilson loves the attention, and these women love the proximity to his fame. It is a parasitic relationship where both the killer and the fan feed off each other's narcissism. Wade knows this. In court, every smirk, every time he stuck out his tongue or flashed a hand sign, he was feeding the algorithm. He wasn't performing for the jury. He was performing for the girls on TikTok. He knew that as long as he looked cool and unbothered, the letters and the commissary money would keep rolling in. And they did. While the families of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz sat in the courtroom, weeping and reliving the worst days of their lives, Wade Wilson was checking out his reflection in the monitor, knowing that somewhere, a teenage girl was making an edit of him set to a Lana Del Rey song. This juxtaposition, the grieving families versus the internet fan club, is the most dystopian aspect of this entire case. It forces us to ask, have we, as a society, blurred the line between true crime and entertainment so much that we have forgotten there are real bodies in the ground? If the courtroom was Wade Wilson's visual performance, the jailhouse phone calls, known as the Kiosk tapes, are the audio reality. And if you listen closely, this sexy bad boy illusion falls apart instantly. Thanks to the transparency of the Florida legal system, hours of Wade's calls from prison have been released. Listening to them is like attending a masterclass in manipulation. In these calls, we don't hear a tortured soul or a misunderstood genius. We hear a moocher, a beggar, a man who uses charm like a crowbar to pry open wallets. He speaks to multiple women. His tone changes depending on who is on the line. With some, he is soft, seductive, using a low voice to tell them what they want to hear. "You're the only one who understands me," he purrs. But seconds later, the pivot comes. "So, can you put $50 on my books? I need snacks. I need coffee." It is purely transactional. To Wade, these women are not romantic interests. They are ATMs. He manages his harem of pen pals like a business manager. One of the most revealing calls is with a woman named Jessie. You can hear him gaslighting her in real time. When she expresses doubt or jealousy about other women writing to him, he flips the script. He gets angry. He accuses her of not being loyal. "If you're gonna be with me, you gotta be 100%, he says. He is sitting on death row, convicted of double homicide, yet he demands absolute loyalty from free women. And amazingly, they give it to him. He sells them a fantasy, the idea that they are Bonnie to his Clyde. He promises them a future that doesn't exist. He talks about marriage, about a life together, knowing full well he will likely never walk free again. But the mask slips completely when he talks about the crimes, or rather, when he jokes about them. In one call discussing his potential death penalty, he laughs. He jokes about riding the lightning, the electric chair, or getting the needle. He treats his own execution as a punchline. "I'm not built for prison," he says, "I'm built for speed." There is a total absence of remorse. Not once in hours of recordings does he say, "I'm sorry for what I did to those women." Not once does he express guilt. Instead, he complains about the food. He complains about his lawyer. He complains that people are being mean to him online. This confirms the diagnosis of primary psychopathy. A primary psychopath is incapable of feeling deep emotion. They mimic it, but they don't feel it. Wade understands that he should be sad, but he isn't. He is simply annoyed that his freedom has been restricted. There is a chilling moment where he discusses his fame. He knows he is viral. He asks the women on the phone about his follower count. "How many views did that video get?" he asks. When he hears the numbers are in the millions, you can hear the glee in his voice. He has achieved his goal. In his mind, he isn't a loser who murdered 2 innocent women and threw his life away. In his mind, he is a star. This is the danger of the true crime community when it goes too far. We have given him exactly what he wanted. We fed the narcissist. Another critical aspect of the calls is his relationship with the truth. Wade lies effortlessly. He lies about small things, he lies about big things. He tells different versions of the murder night to different people, testing which story plays better. He is constantly rewriting history to make himself look like the victim, or at least a justified killer. He often references his dark side, as if it's a separate entity, a demon that possesses him. The monster came out, he says. This is a common tactic among killers to distance themselves from their actions. It's a way to say, it wasn't me, Wade, the nice guy you're talking to. It was IT. But the Kiosk tapes prove there is no IT. There is only Wade. The man laughing about ordering a cheeseburger while police were finding the bodies is the same man sweet-talking women out of $20 today. The Kiosk tapes strip away the mystery. They show us that behind the face tattoos and the Deadpool nickname, there is nothing profound. Just a hollow, greedy, manipulative man who views the world as a vending machine. He puts in a little charm and he expects sex, money, or fame to fall out. And the tragedy is, for thousands of people, it's still working. The guilt phase was over. Wade Wilson was officially a convicted double murderer. But the drama was far from finished. Now came the penalty phase. The question shifted from, did he do it? To, does he deserve to live? In Florida, the stakes couldn't be higher. This state is known for its aggressive pursuit of the death penalty. However, Wade's defense team had one final card to play, the broken brain defense. They brought in Dr. Mark Rubino, a neurologist, and Dr. Hyman Eisenstein, a neuropsychologist. Their testimony was fascinating and forms a critical part of our understanding of Wade Wilson. They argued that Wade wasn't just evil, he was physically damaged. They presented MRI scans of Wilson's brain. They pointed to evidence of atrophy, shrinkage, and scarring. They detailed a history of head injuries from his youth, concussions from sports, reckless behavior, and accidents. They argued that the frontal lobes of his brain, the CEO of the brain responsible for impulse control, decision-making, and empathy, were severely impaired. Add to this a chronic, severe addiction to methamphetamine. The defense painted a picture of a man whose brain was a chemical fire. They argued that when he killed Kristine and Diane, his brain was so flooded with drugs and so damaged by trauma that he physically could not control his actions. They tried to tell the jury, don't kill him. He is a sick man who needs help, not a monster who needs execution. It was a compelling scientific argument. But the prosecution dismantled it with one simple word: intent. The prosecutor stood up and reminded the jury of the facts. A brain injury might make you impulsive, might make you angry. But does a brain injury make you drive around for hours looking for a second victim? Does a brain injury make you turn a car around to run over a woman again just to make sure she's dead? Does a brain injury make you order a cheeseburger while negotiating with the police? The prosecution argued that Wade's actions were too organized, too methodical to be the result of a broken brain. He hid the bodies. He changed his clothes. He tried to alter his appearance. These are not the actions of a man in a chaotic psychosis. These are the actions of a calculating predator who knows exactly what he is doing and tries to get away with it. Then came the most heartbreaking moment of the entire saga: the victim impact statements. The families of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz stood before the court. They stood just feet away from the man who murdered their loved ones. Diane's father, sobbing, spoke of the hole left in their family. He spoke of Diane's two sons who would now grow up without a mother. He looked at Wade and called him a vile piece of trash. And what was Wade doing? This is the moment that sealed his fate in the eyes of the public. While a grieving father cried over his murdered daughter, Wade Wilson sat there and rolled his eyes. He looked at his fingernails. He adjusted his suit. At one point he seemed to be holding back a laugh. There was zero empathy, zero humanity. It was the final proof of his malignant narcissism. He couldn't even pretend to care for 5 minutes to save his own life. To him, the grieving families were just boring background noise interrupting his show. The jury saw this. And under Florida's new laws, which no longer require a unanimous vote for the death penalty, they made their decision. For the murder of Kristine Melton, the jury voted 9-3 for death. For the murder of Diane Ruiz, the jury voted 10-2 for death. When the recommendation was read, the courtroom held its breath. People expected an outburst. They expected screaming. Wade simply sat there. When the judge asked if there was any reason he shouldn't be sentenced to death, Wade leaned into the microphone. The room went silent. And he delivered his final line of the trial, "I understand." That was it. No beg for mercy. No final insult. Just a cold, bored acceptance. It was as if he was agreeing to a terms of service update, not his own execution. Judge Nicholas Thompson later affirmed the jury's recommendation. Wade Wilson was sentenced to death. He would be sent to Florida's death row to wait for the needle or the chair. But as the bailiffs led him away and the cameras zoomed in one last time, Wade flashed a thumbs up. A final, grotesque gesture to his fans, to the haters, and to the world. The show was over, but the legend of the Deadpool Killer was just beginning. So, how do we sum up Wade Wilson? Is he a victim of biology? Did the head injuries and the drugs create a storm he couldn't control? Or is he simply purely evil? The uncomfortable truth is likely a mixture of both, but not in the way his fans think. The brain damage explains the impulsivity. It explains why he couldn't hold a job, why he lived a chaotic life. But brain damage does not explain sadism. Millions of people suffer from traumatic brain injuries. Millions of people struggle with drug addiction. They don't strangle women in their sleep. They don't run over mothers with cars until they look like spaghetti. The cruelty? The joy he took in the suffering of others? That wasn't the drugs. That was Wade. He exhibits the classic dark triad. Narcissism, the need for attention, the grandiosity in court. Machiavellianism, the manipulation of women, the transactional nature of his relationships. Psychopathy, the lack of empathy, the coldness, the shallow effect. But the most disturbing part of this story isn't Wade Wilson. It's society. The Wade Wilson case is a dark mirror reflecting our current culture. It exposes the halo effect, a cognitive bias where we assume that because someone is physically attractive, to some, they must have other positive qualities. Because he is tall, has a symmetrical face, and wears a suit well, thousands of people ignored the swastika on his head. They ignored the blood on his hands. They rewrote reality to fit their fantasy. We live in an era where true crime has become true crime fanfiction. We treat real murderers like fictional characters in a Netflix drama. We edit them, filter them, and ship them. But Wade Wilson is not a character. He is not the Joker. He is not Deadpool. He is a man who destroyed 2 families. He is a man who will now sit in a 6x9 cell for 23 hours a day, likely for the next 15 to 20 years, until the state of Florida executes him. The TikTok edits will stop. The letters will eventually slow down. The Hybristophiles will move on to the next hot killer. And Wade Wilson will be left alone with the only thing that is real, the silence of death row. In the end, he got exactly what he wanted: fame, infamy. The world knows his name. But was it worth it? He traded his life for a few months of viral internet clout. He destroyed everything he touched for a moment in the spotlight. As we close this case file, I want to leave you with one thought. When you see the next attractive killer go viral, when you see the next wave of free him hashtags, remember Diane Ruiz? Remember Kristine Melton? Remember the spaghetti comment? And ask yourself, why are we rooting for the wolf when we should be mourning the sheep?